SkillsUSA Executive Director Shelley Travis, and on behalf of our national staff, Board of Directors, and National Officer team, welcome to your State Leadership and Skills Conference. Our theme this year is SkillsUSA United as One, and that theme speaks to where we've been, where we are, and where we are going. To be united as one doesn't mean to be the same. SkillsUSA membership represents a rich tapestry of backgrounds. As SkillsUSA members, as SkillsUSA family, our unity is found in our shared commitment to a common mission: to become world-class workers, to become world-changing leaders, to serve our communities as responsible citizens, to turn weakness into strength, doubt into confidence, peer pressure into peer support, to show our nation that career and technical education is and always has been essential, not just to career success, but to life success. We celebrate our differences, but our mission unites us, as does the pride we share to represent this great organization. We are SkillsUSA, and I am so proud to serve as your Executive Director as we move beyond the challenges of the past 2 years and into the future full of promise and opportunity. That future will be shaped by each and every one of you. Students, this is your time. The personal, workplace, and technical skills grounded in academics that you'll be demonstrating at this event have never been more in demand or more important, not just economically, but socially too. America needs the skills of your hearts as much as the skills of your hands. And I know that you are ready to become the workers, leaders, and people we're counting on you to become. Advisors, you are the heart of this organization, and the selfless work you do every day to keep that heart beating strong is appreciated more than you know. You are difference makers, you are life changers. Administrators, thank you for recognizing the importance of SkillsUSA and the essential nature of the career-ready skills we help your students develop. You are truly one of our most important and valued allies. Partners, none of this would happen without your support. You fuel the success of our students and advisors. Thank you for embracing the responsibility to help shape our next generation of skilled workers and engaged leaders. To our state directors, your leadership is the foundation of our success. You've helped us navigate the twists and turns of the last 2 years with grace and courage. You've been true champions of our students, and this event is a testament to your unshakable dedication. To the state officer team, thank you for being role models who've kept your fellow students encouraged, excited, and engaged throughout the year. The example you continue to set is an inspiration for many. Finally, thanks to the volunteers and alumni who've donated your time and skills to give back when we've needed you the most. You represent one of SkillsUSA's most important values, the understanding that we're not just here to help ourselves, but to help each other. This conference, along with so many others happening throughout our country, represents our resilience, our passion, and our unifying purpose. It's going to be a great experience, and I encourage you to embrace every moment. Those of you who earn gold here will move on to our National SkillsUSA Championships in Atlanta this June, part of our first in-person national conference in 3 years. I can't tell you how excited I am to see our members from across the nation face-to-face again, to see that SkillsUSA unity expressed live and in person in one location. No Zoom meetings, no mute buttons, no limits. But that road to Atlanta comes through your state first, so make the most of the opportunities this conference will provide. I'd wish all of you luck, but SkillsUSA members make their own luck. I know you are prepared, ready, and excited for this experience, so take pride in your hard-earned skills. Whether you make it to the stage as a medalist or not, your presence here alone makes you a true and undeniable champion, and I hope you're all as proud of yourselves as we are of you. From all of us at SkillsUSA's National Leadership Center, have an amazing, inspiring, and unifying state conference. And I hope to see many of you in person very soon. Until then, congratulations on your amazing accomplishments this year. And remember, for SkillsUSA and for you, the best is yet to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2022 SkillsUSA Nebraska Leadership and Skills Conference. Please welcome our state officers. Our parliamentarian, a senior from North Platte St. Patrick's High School, who enjoys playing the piano, spending time with family and friends, and enjoys SkillsUSA more than Audrey, Ashton Whoa! Our historian, a senior from Seward High School, who likes to be involved in school activities, likes spending time with her family and friends, and enjoys being a member of SkillsUSA, Audrey Wang. Our reporter, a junior from Seward High School, who has an interest in travel and a passion for the message of SkillsUSA, Rachel Runyon. Our vice president, a senior from Seward High School, who enjoys playing guitar and loves SkillsUSA more than Ashton, Ian Fiala. Our treasurer, a sophomore from Thetford High School, who likes hunting and fishing, living in the middle of nowhere, loves SkillsUSA a lot, and is the youngest on this year's team, Brody Stengel. Our secretary, a senior from Louisville High School, who enjoys running and spending time with her friends, Haley Teller. And our president, a senior from Hastings High School, who enjoys being outdoors, truly embodies SkillsUSA, and loves being with family, Tanya Chavez Gutierrez.
The meeting will come to order. The thought for the day will be given by the Vice President.
Life opens up opportunities to you, and you either take them or stay afraid of them. Jim Carrey.
The emblem is symbolic of the SkillsUSA organization. You are about to witness the emblem ceremony, in which the meaning of each component of our emblem will be given and the significance of the colors described. Mr. Parliamentarian.
The shield represents patriotism. The shield denotes our belief in democracy, liberty, and the American way of life. Madam Reporter.
The gear represents the Industrial Society. The gear, symbolic of the Industrial Society, denotes the interdependence and cooperation of the individual working with labor and management for the betterment of mankind. Mr. Treasurer.
The torch represents knowledge. The flaming torch reflects the light of knowledge, which dispels the darkness of ignorance. In the light of the torch, progress will be made toward vocational goals of the individual. Madam Secretary.
The orbital circles represent technology. The circles represent the challenge of modern technology and the training needed to accept and master new technical frontiers, and the need for continuous education. Mr. Vice President.
The hands represent the individual. The hands portray a search for knowledge and our desire to acquire skill. In the process of attaining knowledge and skill, we develop a respect for the dignity of work and become productive and responsible citizens. Madam Historian.
With the affixing of the golden hands, we had the final official color of SkillsUSA. The colors of the emblem represent our organization. Red and white represent the individual states in the chapters. Blue represents the common union of the states in the chapters. And gold represents the individual, the most important element of SkillsUSA. Madam President.
All of the components constitute our emblem. Separately, they could be applied to many organizations, but as one unit, they represent the fundamental principles and purposes of our organization. The emblem represents SkillsUSA. We will respect the flag with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Students and advisors, welcome to the 2022 SkillsUSA Nebraska State Leadership and Skills Conference. We are tremendously blessed to call Grand Island and the Harlan Events Center our homes for the next few days. During your time here, you will be competing against students from all over the state with hopes of becoming a Nebraska SkillsUSA State Champion. I would now like to highlight some beneficial conference tools that you can use during your stay. SkillsUSA Nebraska has several social media accounts that you can follow to stay up to date with SkillsUSA activities. Please take time to follow our accounts on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the SkillsUSA Nebraska YouTube channel. Please make sure to tag SkillsUSA Nebraska on all social media. We hope you all have an excellent time attending this year's state conference. This is your time to shine. Keep in mind the hours, days, and weeks you have spent preparing yourselves for your competitions. I wish the best of luck to all of you. Over the next 3 days, there are a few rules that we all need to follow. Look inside your program on page 43. No alcoholic beverages or narcotics are to be used at any time. Tobacco and vaping is prohibited. Please wear your name badges at all times when you go into your competitions, and make sure that the number on the back of your badge is showing and not your name. Guys and gals should not be in the same sleeping room unless your advisor is present or the door is fully propped open. Do not run and squeal in the hotel hallways. This is not a barn. And last but not least, whenever you are walking outside, make sure you are with a group for an added measure of protection. Please remember, you represent SkillsUSA, so please represent SkillsUSA in the best way possible.
We want to make sure and say thank you to the hosts of our conference. Thank you to Roger Steele, the mayor of Grand Island, for hosting us in this wonderful city. Please rise to be recognized. Also, a huge thank you to Chris Katulik and the staff of Fauner Park for letting us use their facility and their continued support of SkillsUSA Nebraska. Please rise to be recognized.
SkillsUSA is blessed to have 2 gold-level sponsors for our opening session. The first one is the Nebraska Energy Workforce Consortium, also known as the Energy Group. The Energy Group is an assemblage of electric and natural gas utilities, cooperatives, and municipalities with the vision of building Nebraska's energy workforce of tomorrow. Focusing on energy efficiency and balancing their fuel portfolio to include renewable energy, some of their jobs include line installation, pipe fitting, maintenance and repair, plant operations, nuclear plant operations, and engineering. We will now hear a few words from Mr. Shane Kleinensmith, the representative for the Nebraska Energy Workforce Consortium. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Kleinensmith.
Shane Klingen-Smith. I'm an instructor for Southeast Community College Energy Generation Operations. The Nebraska Energy Workforce Consortium is a group of companies put together to keep our energy flowing, keeping a pool of employees involved in the workforce, pretty much looking at generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity. I don't know if any of you out there use electricity much in your daily life or anything, but I know I sure do. I apologize for being a little bit late here today. Kind of came in here running, but keeping a pool of candidates for the energy field is super important. Without that, the grid, it's a constant living thing that you have to make the energy as you need it. We don't have a lot of technology for storing electricity at these times, so if any of you have the ability or want to find a field that will always be super high in demand, come and check out our program, come check out our companies, NPPD, LES, OPPD, great companies, some of the best benefits that are pretty much out there, which is kind of a lot of what's going on in today's competitive market. Salary isn't the only thing that you're looking for in your jobs and careers. So a lot of the personal skills that are involved in, we don't really have a background here, do we? Okay. The personal skills that are involved in our program and stuff: integrity, initiative, dependability, reliability. Obviously, reliability is a big thing in pretty much any field you go into, right? But really have to be there when you're on a rotating shift with somebody, and they got to wait for you to go home at night. A good reputation, professionalism, the ability to learn. That's something you'll take with you all the time. It's an ever-growing and adapting field with all the new renewables and stuff that are coming out today. The need for the grid to adapt to ever-changing environment, say with wind and solar coming up a lot. That's a big thing. Self-development's another thing in the energy career that a person really needs to think about. You can't just, it's not a dead-end job where you're going to go in there and all of a sudden you know everything you need to know. You can just coast. It's not like that. In an ever-changing world, I'm sure all of you are very familiar with that. With today's world, everything's always changing a lot, isn't it? So, applied knowledge, very strong in mathematics and science. Electricity, it's pretty much all on a right triangle, so anything involved with trigonometry, etc., would be strong in that. Information technology, good strong troubleshooter. Your people skills, teamwork, communication, respect, those things go hand in hand with any job you're going to have pretty much. So anyway, that kind of a little briefing on our little group here, the Nebraska Energy Workforce Consortium. Welcome. Oh, thank you.
The other gold sponsor is Southeast Community College, with campuses in Lincoln, Milford, and Beatrice. Southeast Community College offers 60 different programs of study, and its graduates have a 92% employment rate. Southeast Community College also offers low tuition, a 12-to-1 student to faculty, and 2 advisors for every student. Please welcome the representative for Southeast Community College, Mr. Doug Meyer.
Great job, Shane. You know, I was really nervous coming up here until I saw Shane up here, and it just kind of relaxed me. All the stress just melted off. When they told me last week that I was going to be up here talking, you know, I thought, okay, maybe a room with 15, 20 students or so, and I could do that. And they said, no, close to 1,500. So, you know, did one of those humming moments. For a little bit, but I usually move around when I talk. This is a little tough being stationary like this. But you know what? The more I thought about it, this is the group that we love. You know, this is exactly the type of students that we want as an institution, as a college, because, you know, you all have the passion for what you do. You have the aptitude, the skill set for that. So, you know, it's our job just to kind of help you rein that in and harness that passion, keep those fires going. So everything we do as a college, whether it's manufacturing, engineering, technology. We have an instructor here. That's why I had to give a shout out to Lynette. Or energy generation operations, or building construction, or design and drafting, agriculture, culinary, electrical technology. Everything that we have, we're teaching to industry standards. Employers know that, you know, and it's really, really crazy out there. It's almost becoming an arms race, because the president or director that was in the video in the beginning, you know, she's just not blowing smoke. These employers are putting their money where their mouth is with all this, because they need you very badly. And I'm starting to see the salaries going up and up and up. And you can't get those type of starting salaries with most four-year bachelor's degrees. So students that come to us, they're coming out of college knowing how to do something. You know, that's key. My background is totally opposite of this. Is all four-year background, and you know, I didn't know about any of the type of majors and career fields that we have out there, even as a college. You know, I thought, you know, you go here because that's what you do. Do your best, go to class, get the great grades, and everything's going to fall into place. It does not happen, guaranteed. You're talking to a guy who made the dean's list, great attitude, A's and B's the whole time going to college, and when it was graduation time, 0 employers were trying to recruit me. You know, Shane told me that's probably because I put my picture on my resume. You know, I owe him one for that. No, I didn't. You know, it was because what I went to college for was not in demand out there. There weren't any jobs out there. Our students don't have that problem, and they're out there recruiting you. We just got done with a series over the last, 6 weeks of job fairs, career fairs. And last week, just for the electrical students and the electronics students, we had over 60 employers with booths, tables set up in the gym. The gym was just packed, and they're trying to hire these students. And most of these students coming in aren't graduating until maybe next year, but they're just trying to put their name in front of them. So bottom line, you do your part, and what that is just keep doing what you're doing. And have a good attitude and want to keep that party going, want to keep that ball going, and we're going to be here for you. You know, we do tons and tons and tons of hands-on and all this stuff, so you're not going to be, you know, reading and studying and watching videos of other people doing stuff. You're going to be doing it. So that's extremely valuable to industry. Employers know that, and employers are knocking down the door to recruit you. So with that, thank you very much. Appreciate us being here and the chance to talk with you. Thank you.
Our sincere thanks to the Nebraska Energy Workforce Consortium and Southeast Community College for your outstanding support of SkillsUSA Nebraska.
The Board of Directors is the governing body of SkillsUSA Nebraska. The board meets 3 times a year, and together they make decisions that ensure our organization is headed for success. The board is made up of advisor representatives, administrator representatives, business and industry representatives, high school and post-secondary state officer representatives, and a state officer advisor representative. We would like to recognize each member of the SkillsUSA Nebraska board. Please stand and remain standing until all board members are called. Please hold your applause until all are called. The state officer and state officer advisor representatives are Tanya Chavez of Hastings High School, and Jesse Zweep of Louisville High School. The school administration representatives include Sean Scott, the superintendent of Adams Central Schools, Wade Hurley, the associate dean of Northeast Community College in Norfolk. The advisor representatives include Aaron Jones of Waverly High School, Darren Owens of Metropolitan Community College, Roger Campbell of Papillion La Vista South High School, Bonnie Rail of Waverly Middle School, Paul Cross of Westside High School, Brian Helmberger of Sterling High School, Thomas Sibbett of Omaha Benson High School, Zach Pahacek of Metropolitan Community College in Omaha. The business and industry representatives include Ton Inc. from TC Inc. Builder Incorporated in Grand Island, Stephen Abalefa from NMC in Omaha, Tim Shermer from Edward Jones in Hastings, Sean Norby from Mary Lanning Healthcare in Hastings, Angela Simdorn from Hornaday Manufacturing Company in Grand Island. Ex officio state conference coordinators are Diane Willey of Fawn Park in Grand Island, Dana Jelinek of Grand Island Convention and Visitors Bureau. Thank you for all your service to Skills USA Nebraska.
The SkillsUSA Nebraska Steering Committee is a group of dedicated individuals that have invested a great amount of time to assist with the organizing and planning of this year's State Skills and Leadership Conference. These members have organized our contest coordinators, have sought out sponsorships, and have supported this year's conference. Please stand as your name is called and remain standing. Please hold your applause until all members have been called. Sandra Kralikowski from CHI Health St. Francis Medical Center, Dana Jenelik from the Grand Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, Todd Inc. of TC Inc. Builders Incorporated, Brett Forsman from the Careers Pathways Institute, Dennis Harder, Chief of Construction, Cindy Johnson from the Grand Island Chamber of Commerce, Roxanne Holliday from Central Community College Grand Island, Dan Phillips from Grand Island Public Schools, Michaela Soundy from Grand Island Public Schools, Diane Willey from the Heartland Event Center in Fauner Park, and Nicole Durning from the Heartland Event Center in Fauner Park. Please join me in giving them all a round of applause.
The Skills USA Nebraska Academic Achievement Award is presented to the students who have attained a grade point average of 3.5 or higher through the first semester. Education is an essential part of any career field, but it is especially important in the Skills USA framework. One of the three components of the framework is technical skills grounded in academics. The other two components, personal skills and workplace skills, also arise from a good education. It is important for all of our members to strive for this award. The names of the students who achieve this award are listed in the conference program starting on page 32. This has been a very busy and stressful year for teachers and students. We did not have many schools submit names of those that were carrying a 3.5 GPA. Student members, next year, you need to help with state planning and assist your advisor with several deadlines to get the names submitted. Skills USA is much more than our state and national conferences. Our members are actively involved by volunteering in their communities, working in industry, competing at competitions, and graduating within education. Our education of Skills USA comes through our conferences such as Fall Leadership Conference, Mid-America Leadership Conference, Middle School Conference, the State Leadership and Skills Conference, and the National Leadership and Skills Conference. The Distinguished Ambassador Award is given to the dedicated Skills USA Nebraska members and advisors who attend the Big Three conferences in 1 year: Fall Conference, Mid-America Conference, and State Conference. The leaders of our organization that attend these conferences exemplify what a model Skills USA looks like, and they lead members of the local chapter in their yearly program of work. As your name is announced, please come to the stage to receive your pins. Their names can also be found starting on page 36 in your conference programs. Please hold your applause until the end. From Adams Central High School, Advisor Kate Pornier, Isabel Mancies, Maria Martinez, Kaylin Mitchum, Lauren Siddell, Gabriella Wazowski. From Benson High School, Advisor Thomas Sibbett, Charles Bostick, Nikita Evans, Marcus Payne, Corbin Solman. From Columbus High School, Advisor Tracy Dotson, Cole Hotley, Tristan Cam, Evan Lane. From Fairbury High School, Advisor Shane Haley, Seth Engelman, Jake Voss. From Hastings High School, Advisor Matt Hurt, Tara Baumann, Tanya Chavez, Peyton Kreis, Brianna Lowell, Gracie McIntyre, Parker Quigg, Jaden Russell, Brandon Weiss. From Louisville High School, Advisor Jesse Sweep, Advisor Caleb Schultz. Allie Coron, Emma Renner, Bree Smart, Haley Teller. From North Platte St. Patrick's High School, Ashton Guam. From Scottsbluff High School, Advisor Rod Businger, Meg Imhoff, Cameron Kinsey, Jaron Lamstertz, Deanne Wynn, Marion Shaw, Brianna Spurgeon. From Seward High School, Ian Fiala, Rachel Runyon, Audrey Rang. From Thetford Public School, Advisor Justina Ben-Scooter, Brody Stingle. From Wausau Public School, Advisor Bob Evans, Jessica Anderson, Caitlin Eckert, Kendall Story. From Waverly High School, Advisor Aaron Jones and Brooke Luters. Please give these students and advisors another round of a big applause for their dedication.
My fellow SkillsUSA members, we have all been blessed with one of the greatest opportunities in the world. We are part of SkillsUSA Nebraska State Leadership and Skills Conference. For many of you, this will be a pivotal moment in your educational career. You being here would not be possible without your amazing and supportive advisors. Advisors, without you, who would motivate these students to become better? Who would inspire the next generation to do their best? And who would push us to go outside our comfort zone and create new experiences? But it's more than that, advisors. Advisors craft the future of this great state, one student at a time. And for that, we thank you. Please thank your advisors and commend them for everything they do, including giving you this experience to make you a better person. Unfortunately for us, one of these wonderful advisors have reached a pivotal moment in their lives. Would Tracy Dotson of Columbus Public School please come to the stage? Mr. Dotson grew up as an Air Force kid, which allowed him to grow up in multiple places throughout the United States. During his formative elementary school years, he ended up in York, Nebraska, where he was able to graduate from high school. During his years in high school, he participated in football, wrestling, track, FFA, and of course, SkillsUSA. After high school, he continued his educational journey at Kearney State College, where he graduated in 1989. After graduation, he went on to teach in one school district, Columbus Public School. Mr. Dotson has taught at Columbus Public School for 33 years. He was the advisor for VICA and SkillsUSA since 1990. Along with that, he was also the wrestling coach for over 28 years. Mr. Tracy Dotson's future plans are spending more time with his wife and kids. He also hopes to continue his passion for restoration of Airstreams, Spartans, and muscle cars. Along with that, he would like to spend more time on the seat of his Harley. We want to thank Tracy for his years of service to SkillsUSA and wish him the best of luck on his future plans.
SkillsUSA members know that their advisors are essential to all chapter activities. Our advisors also prepare us for our lives outside of the organization. We would like to recognize this year's High School Advisor of the Year for their outstanding work within the local chapter and their efforts within the SkillsUSA organization. This advisor has been involved with SkillsUSA for 20 years. Each year, he is involved with both high school and middle school SkillsUSA. Their chapter averages 50 student members each year, has had 9 state officers, and has been recognized nationally for their work in the Chapter Excellence Program. Congratulations to this year's High School SkillsUSA Nebraska Advisor of the Year, Jesse Zweep from Louisville High School. For our post-secondary college Advisor of the Year, this advisor has been a student member to a Nebraska State Officer, to a National Officer, and now post-secondary advisor and educator. This longtime member of SkillsUSA has done it all. He began his SkillsUSA journey as a freshman in high school, where he found himself wanting to follow in the footsteps of his grandfather and become a carpenter. Naturally, SkillsUSA was the place, and it gave him a way to compete in the trades as opposed to sports. Congratulations to Zach Bahacek from Metropolitan Community College. These advisors will receive a plaque at a later date. Until then, please enjoy these gift cards.
Is your skilled and technical sciences class one of the best parts of your school day? Do you like doing the hands-on classes? If you said yes, imagine what your day would be like without those classes. Unfortunately, for some Nebraska students, that is the scenario. Many students are not able to take STS classes because of the lack of teachers. Maybe this is even happening in your school. Well, you might be the answer to this problem. There are many ways to become a skilled and technical sciences teacher. There are 2 STS teacher training schools in Nebraska. One is Wayne State College in Wayne, Nebraska, which has a STS facility and offers a 4-year traditional program where all the courses are taught on the Wayne State campus. The other one is a University of Nebraska at Lincoln, which offers what is known as a 2+2 program. With this program, you can get many of your technical courses and general studies done during the first 2 years at one of many community colleges around the state. Then you can attend UNL and take the teacher education courses. Both programs have advantages and they are both excellent teacher prep programs. For more information, you can attend the Teach STS reception on Friday, April 8th from 5 to 6 p.m. It will be held at the Bosselman Conference Center in Room 1. Pizza will be provided to those who attend. You can be the hero teacher for the next generation of students.
SkillsUSA Nebraska recognizes individuals that give service above and beyond the normal call to duty with the Dedicated Service Award. This year, we are recognizing one splendid person who has worked very hard to ensure that SkillsUSA is successful. This individual has spent 40 years to ensure the success of SkillsUSA. Would Mr. Tony Glenn please come to the stage to receive the Dedicated Service Award? Mr. Glenn spent 21 years as an advisor for the North Platte High School and 22 years at the Nebraska Department of Education. During his 43 years as a member, the longest in the history of Nebraska, he served on the SkillsUSA National Board of Directors for more than 25 years and served on the National SkillsUSA Board of Directors for 6 years. He has been the announcer at the state conference for over 30 years, the contest coordinator for opening and closing ceremonies for over 20 years, a national judge for opening and closing ceremonies for over 20 years, and choreographer for the state opening and award sessions for 25 years. On top of all this, he taught many power equipment state champions and has coached 14 OCC teams to become state champions, 3 of which have taken first at nationals, and has never had a team place lower than 9th nationally. It saddens me to tell you that Mr. Glenn is retiring from the Department of Education in June. Mr. Glenn has been married to his wife, Deb, for over 42 years and has a daughter, son, daughter-in-law, and 2 grandsons. Thank you, Mr. Glenn, for all you have done for this lovely organization.
First, I would like to thank God for allowing me to be a part of Skills USA for 43 years. I want to make sure and thank my family, some of whom are here today, for going on this journey with me. I want to thank Greg Stair, a friend for over 45 years. As a matter of fact, he and I went to college together. Greg is probably the most dedicated and hardest working state advisor in America. I want to thank all of the advisors, past and present, for your commitment to Skills USA and providing the opportunity for your students to better themselves. And finally, the students themselves. I challenge you to live up to the ideals of Skills USA throughout your life. For if you do, you're sure to be a successful member of society. Thank you.
The Builders Award is one of the most prestigious and one of the hardest awards to achieve as a chapter. Without the involvement of all the schools actively recruiting new members, Skills USA would not be as big as it is. Although the past few years have been rough due to lower levels of membership, we still had a number of chapters that increased. 2 schools from both the high school division and the college technical school division have achieved this accomplishment. When your school's name is announced, please send a representative up to receive your trophy. In the high school division, the 2 schools awarded with the Builders Award for the largest membership increase are Wahoo Public Schools and Thayer Central Public Schools. Congratulations to these chapters. The 2 schools for the College Technical School Division with the largest increase in membership are Northeast Community College Norfolk and Metropolitan Community College Omaha. Congratulations to these chapters. The schools that were just called are great examples of excellent leadership, public relations, and connections within their school and community. Congratulations and thank you all so much for helping Skills USA Nebraska grow. Join me again in applauding our Builders Award winners.
The Chapter Excellence Program recognizes achievement as it relates to the use of Skills USA framework in chapter activities. By using the framework, chapters have a guide for creating activities that encourage participation in their chapter. Would the chapters please stand to be recognized as a quality chapter when your school is announced? Bennington High School, Hastings High School, Westside High School, Wausau Public Schools, Waverly High School, and Wayne State College. After completing the steps to become a quality chapter, the schools continue on towards the Level 1 Chapter of Distinction by documenting activities throughout the year and setting 3 major SMART goals. Would a representative of the following schools that achieve the Level 1 Chapter of Distinction please come to the stage? Cozad High School and Scottsbluff High School. After satisfying the requirements of Level 1, a chapter continues with the fulfillment of completing their chapter goals by focusing on one major goal with documentation and completing that SMART goal for Level 2. Would a representative from Louisville High School, which has achieved the Level 2 Chapter Distinction Award, please come to the stage? In 2021, Louisville was recognized as one of 24 chapters across the nation as a model of excellence chapter in the area of workplace skills. Once again this year, Louisville will move on to the national conference as a model of excellence chapter. Congratulations to all the members of Louisville Skills USA, and good luck at nationals.
Skills USA is constantly growing its members and chapters. We normally just introduce new active chapters for the year. However, we had many new chapters come abroad in 2019 and 2020 that did not get the chance to compete at state conference and to be heavily involved because of COVID-19. We have about 15 advisors in existing chapters from 2019 and 2020, and we would like to introduce those schools. After your school name is called, please stand to be recognized. Aurora High School, Advisor Tate Earps. Boone Central High School, Advisor Trevor Court. Cedar Bluffs High School, Advisor Garrett Zink. Conestoga High School, Advisor Ryan Burns. East Butler High School, Advisors Chris Pulaski and Lisa Bohati. Laurel Concord Coleridge High School, Advisor Pat Harrington. Omaha Nation at Macy, Advisor Matt Spahn. Field High School, Advisor Will Tetmeyer. Wausau High School, Advisor Bob Evans. Lincoln Lutheran Middle School, Advisor Jeff Rickords. Now, I would like to introduce our new chapters from the year 2020 to 2022. Newman Grove Middle and High School, Advisor Brett Miller. North Platte St. Patrick's High School, Advisors Tim O'Neill and Allie Blake. Congratulations to all those schools, and welcome to the Skills USA Nebraska family.
Skills USA Nebraska would not be the organization it is today without our tremendous sponsors that believe in our students, teachers, advisors, and most importantly, our mission. Without our sponsors, this conference would not be possible. At this time, we would like to recognize our top partners. Our platinum level sponsor is Metropolitan Community College. The gold level sponsors are Southeast Community College and the Nebraska Energy Workforce Consortium. The silver level sponsors include Acres Equipment Solutions, Nebraska Machinery Company, Lozier, and Central Nebraska Home Builders. Finally, our bronze level partners are Conductive Swampler and Klaus North America. Financial support is one of the many ways all of our partners contribute to our wonderful organization. In addition, many also contribute their time and effort to help create technical standards, along with coordinating and judging competitions. Please direct your attention to the screens as we recognize all of our industry partners.
Neil Halford was born and raised in the small town of Fort Calhoun, Nebraska. As a child, Neil was involved in a tragic accident which would forever change the lives of both he and his family. In his presentation, From Victim to Victor, the Neil Halford story, Neil will share with us the events which have shaped his life and some of the challenges he has faced. Neil worked as a sales representative for Travelex Insurance Services in Omaha, Nebraska for 18 years. In 16 of those, Neil was recognized as the company's top seller of the year and held the company's record for the highest sales in 1 day, 1 month, and 1 year. In 2005, Neil published an autobiography of his life story entitled The Sound of Sight. With the completion of his book, Neil began giving motivational speeches to organizations and businesses throughout the country. It is Neil's hope that each of us can learn to take our different challenges and become not the victim, but rather the victor. Please give a big warm welcome to Mr. Neil Halford.
Thank you. Truly a pleasure to be here today. I want to thank Greg Stair for asking me here. Before I get started with my presentation, I want to share just a little quick story with you. I had the pleasure of speaking at Skills here at the state convention about 8 or 9 years ago. And as I said in the crowd that day, I listened to some of the people speaking before me, and they were talking about the need for skilled workers in the workforce. And when I got home that night, I shared some of the statistics and things that I had heard with my family. And at the time, I had a 6th grade son and a sophomore in high school daughter. And here we are 8 or 9 years later, and those words that I heard that day must have sunk in, because one of my son is in his 3rd year as an apprentice plumber, and my daughter is a nurse at Boys Town. So I took those words that I heard and turned around and used them on my family, and I have to thank SkillsUSA because I don't have to support them anymore. My story begins on the morning of July 20th, 1977. It was a Wednesday morning, and I was just 2 months shy of my 3rd birthday. I jumped out of bed that morning feeling like a kid on Christmas. Today was going to be a special day. My dad had taken a day of vacation, and whenever he had any free time, he always planned on spending it with my 6-year-old brother, Ryan, and I. These were the thoughts that were on my mind as I flew down the hall and into my brother's room. I climbed up in bed with him and I began shaking him awake. I said, "Ryan, get up. Let's you and I sneak down the hall and wake up Dad." So hand in hand, my brother and I tiptoed down the hall until we reached our parents' door, and as we reached their door, we stopped and we looked at each other and we counted to 3. And on 3, we both dogpiled on top of my dad, and the morning's wrestling match began. One by one, my dad would launch my brother and I from the bed, and we would dive back on until finally, after about 10 minutes of vigorous wrestling, we succeeded in pushing my dad off the bed, and we stood over top of him hand in hand and proclaimed ourselves kings of the bed. Now, my dad pulled himself up off the floor, and he told my brother and I to run to our rooms and get dressed, and he would take us up to the local Midway Cafe for breakfast. It was about an hour later during breakfast that Ryan and I began begging Dad to take us to see Hank. Hank was a large 3-year-old Appaloosa colt, standing just over 16 hands. Now, my family did not live on a farm, but my dad had been born and raised around horses. His father was a horse trader. And a few years before, he had purchased Hank with the idea that he would train him and sell him for a profit. He kept the horse on a farm owned by some family friends just a few miles outside of town. And as we left the cafe that morning, Dad finally gave in and told Ryan and I that he would take us to see Hank. Now, as we neared the farm, my dad told me to play in the field next to the barn while he and Ryan went in and cleaned the horse's stall. And he said that when he was done, he would let Ryan and I take turns riding the horse. Now, as I played in the field, I began to hear a commotion coming from inside the barn. And at the same time, Dad and Ryan were inside cleaning the horse's stall, but for some reason, Hank was extremely restless that morning. Finally, my dad got tired of the horse's antics, and he told my brother to take Hank and go turn him loose in the corral. And as the two of them exited the stall, Hank pulled away from my brother's grasp and began trotting towards the open barn door. And my brother, seeing that Hank would make his own way into the corral, turned back to help my dad finish the job at hand. Now, meanwhile, outside, curiosity had finally gotten the better of me. Quietly, I snuck over to the corral and I slipped through the bars. I began to tiptoe my way across the open corral until I reached the barn door. And as I reached the barn door, I started peering into the darkness of the barn to see what was going on, and suddenly I froze. Coming at me out of the darkness of the barn was Hank, and seeing me suddenly appear in the open barn door in front of him, he was terrified. Instinctively, he tried to jump over me, and his front hooves cleared me, but his rear right hoof smashed me in the face, knocking me back into the corral. For a few moments, I lay there in the dirt, and then somehow I managed to pull myself to my feet and began whimpering. It was my cries that brought my brother running from the barn, and as he stepped out, he was completely unprepared for the sight that faced him. He saw me standing there with my little hands covering my face, and blood was pouring from between my fingers. It was my brother's screams that brought my dad running from the barn, and as he came out and saw me standing there covered from head to toe in my own blood, he immediately reacted. He grabbed me under one arm and my brother under the other, and he ran for his truck. Now, as he sped towards town, my dad realized that he had a very big decision to make. Upon reaching town, he could call the local rescue squad, or he could try and get me to the nearest hospital on his own. Now, the little town of Fort Calhoun, where my family lives, is located about 10 miles to the north of Omaha, and it's generally about a 15 to 20 minute drive to the nearest hospital, Emmanuel Hospital, located in North Omaha. Now, as he pulled into town that morning, my dad took one look at me lying there on the seat next to him, struggling to breathe through what remained of my face, and he knew there was going to be no time to try and get me to a rescue squad. Dad ended up making the drive that morning to Emmanuel Hospital in just under 10 minutes. It was probably that extra 5 to 10 minutes that meant the difference between life and death for me that morning. It was a long 9 hours later when the doctors finally exited the emergency room and met with my parents for the first time. They told them that I had just undergone more than 8 hours of major facial reconstructive surgery. They told them that nearly every bone in my face had been either broken or crushed. They told them that I had over 3 feet of wire and more than 600 stitches holding my face together. They told them that I had completely lost my right eye and that my left eye was damaged beyond all repair. They also said that there was some swelling on the brain and that I might possibly have sustained some brain damage. And it was about 3 hours later when my parents were finally allowed to take that long walk up to the intensive care unit. And as they walked into that hospital room for the first time, and looked at me lying there in that bed, they realized just how quickly life can change. That morning, I had been their normal, chubby-cheeked, energetic little boy. And now I was an unrecognizable child, covered in tubes and bandages and wires. My parents turned to one another and they held each other and they cried. After about 10 minutes, my mom cried herself to sleep, and my dad picked her up and he took her over and he laid her down on a couch, and as he turned back to my bedside, he struggled to hold back the guilt that threatened to overcome him. He stood there looking down at me for a few moments, and then finally he took his big hand and he laid it on my chest and he said these words. He said, "Son, I promise you that from this day forward, I will do everything in my power to see that you live the most normal and happy life possible." It was 2 days later before the doctors finally came and met with my parents again. And they told them that though I would live the rest of my life totally blind, I had not sustained any brain damage, and the swelling on the brain had receded. Now that's something that I'm still trying to convince my family and friends of today. They also told them that because of my young age, I would probably never remember having been able to see. And they were right. Just 1 month after the accident, I left the intensive care unit and returned home with my parents. And within 4 months of that, my mom was once again breaking up wrestling matches between my dad, my brother, and I in the middle of the living room floor. I had once again taken up that fearless approach to life that only a 3-year-old boy can have. Now, it was just 2 years later when I was forced to face the first big challenge of my life. That fall, I was going to be starting school. And I was looking forward to school. To be honest, school sounded like a lot of fun to me. I had heard my brother and his friends talk about it. But then one night, as I lay in my bed trying to fall asleep, I overheard a conversation my parents were having in the next room. And right away, I could tell by the sound of their voices that something was wrong, but at first I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I realized that my dad was crying. Now, folks, I was terrified. I couldn't understand. I'd never, as long as I could remember, I'd never seen my dad cry. And for a few days, I worried about it. And then finally, my parents came and sat me down and told me what it was that had been bothering them. They told me that that fall, I was going to be starting school, but that I was not going to be attending the Fort Calhoun Public School. They said that I was going to be going to some school called the Nebraska School for the Visually Handicapped. They said that it was located in some town called Nebraska City, and that it was an hour away from home, and I was going to have to live at the school Monday through Friday and would only be allowed to come home on the weekends. Well, I couldn't understand. That wasn't right. 4-year-old kids aren't supposed to live away from home. That's for college kids. That's for grown-ups. But nevertheless, during the last week of August, just 1 month before my 5th birthday, my parents packed me up and took me to school at NSVH. I spent 3 years there, and I can honestly stand up here and tell you that those were the most difficult 3 years of my life. But I learned a lot, both in the classroom and about life. I learned a lot about being responsible for your own actions and about making your own decisions because there's no one else there to make them for you. A lot of lessons that kids don't learn until they reach high school or college age. I also received a fantastic education. I learned to read and write and do mathematics in both Braille and in print. And then during the summer before the start of my 3rd grade year, my parents made the decision to mainstream me into the Fort Calhoun public school system. Now, being mainstreamed into public school meant a whole new set of challenges for me as I learned to adapt in the quote-unquote sighted world. And some of the biggest challenges I faced during those early years at public school came from some very unexpected sources. At the time, there was a state-funded organization called Services for the Visually Impaired. And their function was to make sure that visually impaired children are receiving the skills necessary to make them productive adults. They would come out once or twice a month and they would work with me on things like learning to cook and learning to do laundry. But the one thing they always liked to work with me the most on was using a cane. Now, I absolutely could not stand using a cane. As a matter of fact, I went back and forth on it with them for a couple of months, and they would go as far as to set up meetings with me to come out and work on using the cane, and I would go as far as to accidentally forget the meetings. So then finally, one night, unbeknownst to me, they set up a meeting between themselves, my parents, and the school. And I'll never forget that next day. As I got ready for school, I sat down and was putting my shoes on and grabbed my bag, threw it over my shoulder, and I was just headed out the door, and my mom came around the corner and she said, "Neil, hold on a second." She turned to the closet, opened it up, reached inside, pulled my cane out, stuck it in my hand, and I looked at her and said, "What do you want me to do with that?" And she said, "Well, Neil, your dad and I have decided that from now on we want to start seeing you use your cane at all times." Now, I really didn't feel like arguing with her, so I used the cane as I walked out up the driveway and down the hill. And as I got down to the bottom of the hill and around the corner and knew I was out of sight of the house, I folded that sucker up, stuck it in my bag, and ran off to school, pumped that I had outsmarted my mom. As I walked through the front doors there, Mr. Echtenkamp, one of the 6th grade teachers, was standing there. He grabbed me by the arm. He said, "Mr. Halford, where's your cane?" I said, "Well, it's in my bag." He said, "Mr. Halford, we've decided here that from now on we want to start seeing you use your cane at all times. Do you understand me?" It was right about then that I figured out that I was caught in the midst of a conspiracy. But I still had a few tricks up my sleeve. For about the next 3 months, I mastered the art of acting like I was using a cane. I would walk through the halls there and I would just kind of swing it around, just acting like I was using it. And then one day, as I left my music class and was headed off back to my classroom, everything finally came to a head. I was passing in front of the boys' restroom, and one of the younger boys came running out, and he tripped over my cane and went sprawling on the floor. Unfortunately, he wasn't hurt, but at that exact second, Miss Johnson, the other 6th grade teacher, was coming around the corner. She saw him go falling over my cane, and she ran over there and she took it out of my hand. She said, "Mr. Halford, what do you think you were doing?" I said, "Nothing, Miss Johnson." And she said, "Mr. Halford, do you understand how important it is for you to use this cane and for you to use it correctly?" I said, "Yes, Miss Johnson." She said, "Mr. Halford, when all the other kids go outside to play after lunch, I want you to stay in the lunchroom. You and I are going to have a talk." I can honestly tell you that in all my years of school, that was probably the only day I wasn't looking forward to lunch. All the other kids ran outside to play after lunch, and I was sitting there just shaking in my shoes, dreading the thought of Miss Johnson coming in there and just shredding me. But you know, I really have to commend her. She came in there that day and she took a folding chair and she set it down so it was facing me, and she took me by the hands and she really tried to get down and talk to me on the level of a 6th grade boy. She said, "Neil, do you understand why we feel it's so important that you use this cane?" And I said, "Well, no." And she said, Neil, let me ask you something. When you get up into high school, do you want to go places and hang out with your buddies? And I said, well, yeah. And she said, Neil, and do you maybe want to have a girlfriend someday? And I said, yeah. And I'm not joking, you guys. She said this. She said, Neil, do you maybe want to make out with a girl someday? And I said, yeah. And she said, do you want to grow up and get married and go off to college and have kids and do all of those things? And I said, yes. And she said, Neil, you have got to realize that this cane is the key to you accomplishing those dreams. And she went on to talk for about 10 minutes more that afternoon about being responsible for your own actions and about being confident in your own abilities and about making decisions that were best for your future. And you know, as I went back to my classroom that afternoon and listened to Mr. Echtenkamp talk about math and science, I wasn't thinking about those things. I was thinking about the things that Miss Johnson had said. And I was still thinking about them that night when I went home and sat down to dinner with my parents. They asked me how my day had gone, and I told them what had happened. I told them how the kid had fallen over my cane and how Miss Johnson had set me down and talked to me about being responsible for my own actions and about being confident in my own abilities and about making decisions that were best for my future. And I told them that I had been thinking about it all day and that I realized that Miss Johnson was right. I did need to be responsible for my own actions. I did need to be confident in my own abilities. And I did need to make decisions that were best for my future. And I told my parents that because of that, I had come to the decision that I was never going to use that cane again. And you know what? I didn't. And yes, I did go on to accomplish every one of those things that Miss Johnson talked about that day. So let me ask you a question. What is your cane? What do you have in your life that might be keeping you from accomplishing your dreams? You know, another one of the big challenges I faced during those early years at Fort Calhoun came from another very unexpected source. It came from right here. Ever since an early age, I've always been extremely competitive. Actually, that's probably not putting it quite bluntly enough. I cannot stand to lose. So when I got to public school, that not only meant that I wanted to be doing the same things that all the other kids were doing, but I wanted to do it as well or better than they were doing it. When I first got to public school in 3rd and 4th grade, I can remember all the kids in my class would get together on the weekends and they would ride their bikes around town. And at the time, I had a fantastic friend by the name of Jay Weeks. And Jay would put me on the back of his Huffy bike and he would pedal me around town with all the other kids. But you know what? It absolutely drove me nuts that I had to be ridden around on the back of his bike. So one day I went home and I told my dad how much it bothered me. And about 2 weeks later, Dad showed up with a 2-seater bike in the back of his truck, and 15 minutes later, Jay and I were cruising around town with all the other kids on my 2-seater bike. And that taught me something. It taught me that there was always going to be a way if I could just be smart enough to figure out what it was. As we reached 5th and 6th grade, all the kids at school began to trade those Huffy bikes in for 3-wheelers and 4-wheelers. And on Christmas morning during my 5th grade year, my dad showed up with a Honda 125 4-wheeler for my brother and I. And at first my dad really kind of felt bad because he thought that he had gotten a present that Ryan would be able to use, but that I probably wouldn't get a whole lot of use out of. Well, I let Ryan ride the four-wheeler all Christmas morning and into the afternoon until he got cold and tired. And as soon as he came in the house, I ran up to my room. I got on the phone. I called my buddy Jay. I said, Jay, you got to get down here and see what I got for Christmas. About a half an hour later, Jay showed up, and I showed him the four-wheeler and showed him how everything worked. And he climbed on, and I climbed on behind him, and he took it around the block a couple of times. And about the third time around the block, I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, Jay, pull back in front of the garage. We're going to switch. Yeah, he did the same thing some of you just did. And I said, no, Jay, seriously, I've been thinking about this. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to sit on the front of the seat. I'm going to hold on to the inside of the handlebars. I'm going to run the gas and shift. You sit behind me. You hold on to the outside of the handlebars. You steer and run the brakes. You should have seen the look on the face of my neighbors the first time they'd see me go flying by on that thing. And if you think that's funny, you should have seen the face of the town sheriff the first time he pulled us over for driving on the streets. It wasn't so funny the second time, though. As we reached junior high, the new craze amongst all the kids became Nintendo. Oh yeah, this presented a whole new challenge. Probably the biggest challenge at the time was convincing my mom to buy me one. She thought that had to be the stupidest thing she'd ever heard of, buy a blind guy a video game system. The big game that all the kids were playing at the time was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. The whole point of the game was to beat one guy after another until you beat 15 guys and got up to fight Mike Tyson. By the time I finally convinced my mom to get the Nintendo, all the other kids were on the third or fourth guy. I ran home, went down to my room, took that Nintendo, hooked it up to the TV, and I would sit there for hours trying to beat that first guy, going by nothing more than the sound coming from that speaker. I'd get so mad, I'd slam the controller down, and I would stomp out, swearing I would never play the stupid thing again. An hour later, here I'd come. I'd slink back in and sit down, pick it up, and start over again. But within 2 weeks of getting the Nintendo, I'd finally caught up to all the other kids, and within 3 months of that, all the kids at school were calling me to find out how to get up to Mike Tyson. Now, as we reached high school, my friends began to turn those energies toward more important things like high school athletics. Now, my brother had been a wrestler in high school, so I had spent many, many nights being tortured in the middle of the living room floor. And it was only natural for me to want to follow in his footsteps. So as I started my freshman year, I made the decision to join the Fort Calhoun High School wrestling team. And as I started that first season, I had very high expectations and set 2 very high goals for myself. First, that one day I wanted to qualify for the Nebraska State High School Wrestling Tournament. And second, that I wanted to walk in the Parade of Champions, which is the ceremony they hold for the finalists at each weight at the state tournament. So as you can see, I had, again, very high expectations, and were those expectations quickly dashed. That freshman season, I ended with a record of 6-16. That's 6 wins and 16 losses. And of the 6 wins, probably 3 of them I received because the other team didn't have a shrimp small enough to wrestle me. I weighed 97 pounds and wrestled in the 103-pound weight class. But as that first season ended, I was undaunted. I realized that the reason I wasn't winning wasn't because I wasn't smart enough. It was because I wasn't strong enough and fast enough. So I went to the high school track coach and asked if I could work out with the track team during the spring, and I went to the football coach and asked if I could work out with the football team during the summer and the fall. And as I came back for my sophomore season, I was stronger and quicker, and once again I had high hopes. And once again was I disappointed. That sophomore year, I ended with a record of 8-18. So yeah, I managed to pick up 2 more wins, but I also managed to pick up 2 more losses. But once again, during the off season between my sophomore and junior year, I went back to work in the weight room and with a jump rope. And as my junior season started, I finally began to reap the seeds that I had sown. That junior year, I went into the district tournament with a record of 25-5. I ended up placing second at districts and reaching my first goal of qualifying for the Nebraska State High School Wrestling Tournament. A week later, I went down to state and won 2 matches and lost 2 matches and fell just 1 win short of bringing home a state medal. So once again, during that off season between my junior and senior years, I went back to work with just that one final goal in mind of walking in that parade of champions. That senior season, I once again placed second at districts, and I found myself a week later on Friday night standing on the floor of the Bob Devaney Sports Center in front of 12,000 people wrestling in the state semifinals. I ended up losing that match 4-0 and fell just 4 points short of reaching that final goal. I ended up wrestling my way back through the tournament and bringing home a 4th place medal from state. And it was the next day that my dad took me out to breakfast to celebrate. And it was on the way home that he told me about those words that he had spoken all those years before as he stood there looking down at me lying in that hospital bed. And it was then that he told me just how proud of me he was. Not because of what I had accomplished on a wrestling mat, but because of the person that I had become. I ended up graduating from high school that spring and went on to attend the University of Nebraska at Kearney. And though I never once took a summer class and held a part-time job, I graduated with my Bachelor of Science degree in just 4 years. My last 2 semesters, I carried a 4.0 GPA and made the dean's list. And 1 week after graduating from college, I moved back to Fort Calhoun and married my longtime girlfriend, Carrie. About a 1.5 years later, my first child, my daughter Emily, was born. And in December of 2000, my second child, my son Cole, was born. And then during the summer of 2004, I sat down with the idea that I was going to try and write a book about my story. And on January 11th, 2005, my book, The Sound of Sight, was published. That first box of books showed up at the house, and I opened it up, and I took the very first book out, and I sat down at the table, and I wrote out a message to my parents, thanking them for helping to shape me into the man that I am today. I took that very first copy over, and I put it in my mom's hands, and that weekend, my dad left on a hunting trip, and my mom sat there all weekend and read the book from cover to cover. And it was exactly 1 month to the day later, on February 11th, that my mom was killed in a tragic car accident just a few miles from home. And so another challenge in our lives had begun. Let me ask you a question. What is generally your first reaction when faced with a major challenge in your life? You know, I've often noticed over the years that many people, when faced with challenges in their lives, generally say, "Why me? Why did this have to happen to me?" I can honestly stand up here in front of you today and tell you that never in my life have I asked, why God chose to put me in this situation. There is no future in seeking answers of the past. It's not the why, but rather the what. What we choose to do with the situations we're given in life, that is what builds our character. That is what ultimately defines us as individuals. You know, as I sat there writing those stories in the book, I tried to answer most of the questions that I get from time to time. And the one question I always get the most is, Neil, how do you do the things that you do? How do you snow ski and water ski and wrestle and play Nintendo? How do you do all of these things? And for years I would tell people, I don't know, I just do them. But as I sat there writing those stories, I realized that I was wrong. I did know. That first time that I sat down on that four-wheeler with my buddy Jay, or the first time that I sat down to play that Nintendo, or the first time that I walked out on that wrestling mat, I believed that I was going to be able to do those things. I believed it right here. And finally, I'd like to just share one last story with you today. This happened about 10 or 12 years ago. I was at work one day, and I was in the lunchroom there, and I was getting my lunch ready, and one of the girls came in, and she was standing there talking to me, and she happened to look down at my hands, and she said, "My gosh, Neil, what happened to your hands?" My hands were all bruised and cut up, and I said, "Oh, my buddy Jay and I were pulling the transmission out of my 67 Cutlass convertible last night." And she said, "Well, you gotta be kidding me." I said, "No, why?" And she said, "Well, I don't even know any sighted people that would take their own transmission out of their car." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, that's because they've never tried." And as I walked back to my desk, I started thinking about our conversation, and I thought to myself, "Well, you know what, Neil, that was some pretty good stuff." And I realized that I was right. How many times are there things that we don't accomplish in life, not because physically or mentally we're not capable, but rather because we simply choose not to try? So I'd like to leave you today with just a few thoughts. First of all, never ask why. There is no future in seeking answers of the past. Second, you've got to believe before you're ever going to achieve. Third, you've got to be willing to try before you'll ever know the feelings of success. And then if I could just leave you with one last thought, it would be this. Never let success go to your head, but most importantly, never allow failure to go to your heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halford, for speaking to us today and giving us your inspiring message. Before we recess, I would like to remind you of a few things. Remember that the delegate session will take place on Thursday, April 7th. This will be held at the 5 Points Bank Arena in the upper VIP lounge starting at 4 p.m. Each active chapter is allowed only so many delegates, which is based on the chapter's current membership. Your advisor will be assigning your chapter's delegates. This session includes meeting the 2022-2023 state officer candidates, asking questions, and then voting for a 7-officer slate. These 7 will go through leadership training in early June. There will be a lot of things happening throughout this conference, so make sure you know when your competition is and check the guide for any times. I genuinely hope that all of you enjoy this conference very much because it has been 2 years since an in-person conference. Make sure to follow our social media accounts on Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I now declare the opening session of the 2022 SkillsUSA Nebraska State Leadership and Skills Conference in recess.